welcome to Business Connections, a program put on by the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Holly Allen, Director of Marketing and Communications at the Chamber, and today we're talking about public policy issues that affect businesses. Every year topics come up, whether it's tax regulations or other issues that could affect businesses in our area, and the Chamber acts as a voice for the business community as a whole. We gather their input and then we represent them, whether it's a local, state, or a federal issue. And so to help prepare us for some of those issues that might be coming up in 2018. Today I am joined by Chris Kirschner, who is Executive Vice President with the Chamber, a colleague of mine. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks. It's good to see you outside the office.
I know. We should do this more often.
Absolutely.
Next time, bring some snacks with us or something. Chris, I want to talk to you about some of the issues you're preparing already for 2018, but let's take a step back first and talk about how the Chamber acts as that voice of business. You're a registered lobbyist, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a registered lobbyist, and we have two others on staff at the Chamber. So we have 3 registered lobbyists all together, where we're able to focus on advocating for the business community in Columbus, Washington, D.C., and on the local level. And I'm glad you started off with this, because I always like to explain the context behind why we do what we do. You know, the business community, business owners are very focused on running their business. They do a tremendous job at running their business, ensuring that they're meeting their objectives and their goals of their business, of their employees. And a lot of times they don't have the time to focus on some of these government affairs issues that are impacting their business. You know, government is a fast-moving machine at times. At times it can be extremely slow and frustrating, but they are always looking at passing new laws and trying to improve the climate in Ohio. Sometimes, though, those intentions aren't always met, and they could be hurtful to the business climate in Ohio. And that's where the Chamber comes in. We're monitoring legislation on the federal, state, and local level every day to see what legislation is going to impact the business community. And if something's going to be positive for the business community, you know that your Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce is going to be right there in the front lines, making sure that the support of the Dayton area business community is heard. If something's going to be hurtful to the business community, we're going to be right there at the front lines trying to kill that legislation and trying to table that legislation so that the business community is not impacted negatively. So we spend a lot of our time monitoring and then actually advocating for and on behalf of the business community. We know business owners need to focus on running their business, and we are the paid professionals that can focus on advocating and trying to advance some of those public policy priorities that's going to make it easier and better for them to do business in the Dayton area. And honestly, Holly, there's no other organization that can focus strictly on the business community and advocating their points. There's a lot of organizations that do advocacy, so I'm not trying to disparage any of those organizations. But our clientele, our members, is private sector businesses, employers in the Dayton area. Our 2,500 plus members pay us annual dues so that we will represent their government affairs needs and their public policy needs before government. That's our job. That's what we love to do. You know, a lot of people don't even want to engage in the political side of things. Me and our team of lobbyists, we wake up every day with a smile on our face, loving to engage on these public policy issues and love representing the business community's needs. And that's really, you know, where my heart, my passion is business owners are putting their capital at risk. They're putting their businesses, trying to elevate their businesses every single day. If I can help them do more and better business in the Dayton area by ensuring a strong public policy environment and a strong legislative environment that supports the business community, then I feel like I'm doing my little part at the Chamber to help them continue to do business.
Yeah, very good points there. We want to look at some of the issues. You talk about you're always looking at some of the topics that are coming up, so you've already looked ahead to 2018. So can you identify, I know right to work is one of those topics that you have kind of identified might be coming up in 2018. Can you talk about what that proposal might be, what we could see in the coming year?
Sure. I love that you just jumped right in there.
Throw it out there.
With the controversial issue. Well, it's controversial to some, it's not controversial to us at the Chamber. It's a very easy issue for us here at the Chamber. Our business members, our members have come to us and said, right to work needs to be passed in Ohio. And the reason why is because they see the negative economic development that occurs because we're not a right-to-work state. So first, let's clarify the issue. What is right to work?
What does that mean?
Right to work basically says you cannot be forced to join an organized labor union.
Okay.
Doesn't outlaw labor unions, doesn't say they're bad. It just says as an employee in an organization that might have organized labor, you can't be forced to join that union. That's all it is. I mean,
so it just gives you your right to make your own decision.
That's exactly right. I mean, and that's what this country was founded on, was being able to have freedom to choice, right? Be able to make a decision on your employment and what you support or don't support in your workplace. So right to work just says you can't be forced to join a union.
Okay.
There are 28 states across the country that are now declared as right to work states, a number which are surrounding states. Michigan, which, very strong labor automotive presence, is a right to work state. Indiana's a right to work state. Kentucky's a right to work state. West Virginia's a right to work state. So that gives them an economic development advantage. And what I mean by that is when there are companies that are looking to relocate to other states, they look to see which states are right to work and which aren't right to work. And they make decisions based on that. Ohio doesn't even make the list sometimes when those companies are looking at locating to a Midwestern state because we're not right to work. But you know who does make the list? Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, West Virginia. And you see economic growth over there, and they're leveraging the fact that they're a right-to-work state so that they can receive some of that economic benefit. And we are at a significant disadvantage. So our members have come to us and said, we want this to be a focused priority. So we've heard them loud and clear, and to us it's a very easy issue of saying we just want Ohio to be economically competitive with our surrounding states and other states in the country. We want to recruit businesses to Ohio. I wouldn't be working for the Chamber of Commerce if I didn't say I want to see more business investment in the Dayton area.
Right.
And I want to put together the right environment that allows for greater business investment. So that's what it is. Now, it doesn't come without controversy. There are some folks that believe this would be harmful to labor unions, and it wouldn't. It would really just give employees the freedom to choose. But because of that, it creates some controversy, and this will not be an easy thing to pass, but it's something we're going to be looking at the state legislature and talking to them about the possibility of right to work, and we're also going to be looking to see if a ballot issue is the right direction to go. But our team is organized on this, and we're putting together really a strategic plan specific around this issue on how we want to move forward in 2018 and maybe even 2019, because this won't happen quickly. This will be an issue that will take a little more time, but it's the right thing for Ohio, it's the right thing for business, and it's the right thing to continue to grow jobs and population in the Dayton area and in the state of Ohio.
Okay, so you're saying that it doesn't look that a decision on right to work will be made in 2018, but we might hear the conversation beginning? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
So we would love to have a decision made in 2018,
right.
But my political experience tells me it's going to probably take a little bit longer, but we are certainly working to elevate that conversation, and it would be great to have a decision made in 2018. My personal opinion is that it's probably going to take a little bit longer.
Okay. That's good to know. Another issue, I know you said the last one was a little controversial, this one might be as well, is minimum wage, which we've seen that conversation come up in Ohio in recent years. But the Chamber has decided that conversation might come up again in 2018. Can you talk to me about what you're watching there and what makes you think it might come up in 2018? And what is the conversation that's being had around minimum wage in Ohio?
So again, I'll give a little more background on this one. So voters may remember in 2006, the Ohio voters passed a constitutional amendment that said our minimum wage, it basically raised our minimum wage by about 25% at that time, and then tied all future increases to the cost of inflation. So it said, okay, as inflation increases, minimum wage will keep up with that and increase as inflation goes up. I believe our minimum wage right now is $8.15 an hour. It just raised because inflation raised, so minimum wage raised with that. So there's been some talk about separate minimum wage issues going on. Some cities in the northern part have looked at minimum wage increases. Up in Cleveland area, they've looked at minimum wage increases and actually designating a minimum wage specific for that city that's higher than the state minimum wage.
Okay.
Federal government's also talked about possible minimum wage increases. All these conversations happening is leading us to believe that this conversation is probably going to be elevated in 2018, and we may even see some more proposals moving forward.
Okay.
Now, generally, the Chamber's always had a position of, we think markets should decide wages. We're not saying what a minimum wage should or shouldn't be, but we do think that the employers should be able to choose what they think is the best wage to pay their employees, and then employees can choose whether or not they want to work at that establishment based on the wages, right? I mean, that's how free market works, is the freedom for an employer to set a salary or wage, and the freedom for an employee to choose whether or not they want to work there.
Right.
But we may have to look at this from a different angle in 2018, because as we're continually seeing more of these threats of minimum wage increases, we might have to look at being a little more proactive around minimum wage. Instead of just opposing any minimum wage across the board, we might have to look at some proactive proposals that might thwart some of these proposals that are so outrageous that it would just destroy our business community.
Right.
So I don't know what those are going to be yet. I know the conversation's happening right now, and I know the conversation's going to be elevated in 2018. Not exactly for sure what it's going to look like, but you and others can know that the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce is at the forefront of those conversations, ensuring the voice of the Dayton area business community is heard.
Got it. That kind of leads me to, before we get on to a couple more issues that might come up, how does the chamber decide first of all, whether to take a stance on a position, and once they've decided to engage, what position do they take, and how do they make that decision?
Yeah, it's a great to put that context around it. So, Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce, we are a membership-driven organization. And that's just not fancy names that we put out there when we're doing TV shows. Right. We actually mean it and we live by it. So our members that pay us dues, those 2,500 members I mentioned earlier that pay us annual dues, they're the ones that decide what positions we should take. So we actually have a legislative and regulatory affairs committee made up of our members at the chamber. They review these proposals, and then they make recommendations to our board on positions that we should take for or against legislative issues. So they bubble up through that legislative committee reviews them. They make those recommendations to the board then reviews the recommendation, and then they take an official position for the organization. Once that position's taken, that's the position I represent and our other lobbyists represent when we're in Columbus or Washington, D.C. So it's a true grassroots upward movement to get those positions move forward.
That's a good explanation. Thank you for. I think it's important to note that it does come from the membership. It's not just Chris Kirshner and his team out making those decisions on their own.
You don't want that to happen.
We do not want that to happen. No. Okay. So one more issue that we're looking at, and I guess it's just an overarching infrastructure, transportation, but one of those sections that the chamber has been really looking at closely and really has been having a conversation about for a long time is 35. It's been a problem for a while. The chamber has identified that stretch of 35 as something that needs to be improved. Can you talk about where that is? What section of 35 are we talking about first?
So sure, I'm going to talk about two sections of 35.
Okay.
So you have the 35 in Greene County, and you have the 35 in Montgomery County. Both part of the Greater Dayton region, both priorities for the chamber, both priorities for the business community. So I'll first start with Greene 35, because Greene 35 has two or three at-grade intersections there that they've been wanting to remove. Well, this was about a $120 million project for a long time, and that's a really hefty number for ODOT to try to move forward. So we went to redesign with ODOT, and we were able to redesign and get that project cost significantly lowered by doing something called a super street out in Greene County. A super street is going to take, right now, the stretch of 35 in Greene County, it runs free-flowing east-west about 65% of the time. By doing this super street, which is a real innovative transportation model, it's going to take that all the way up to like 89% efficiency east-west. So there's still going to be some stops. Right. But it's only 11% of the time there's going to be stops.
Well, and for people who have sat in traffic heading either way on 35, because it gets backed up, especially during rush hour, that's a big improvement.
Absolutely is. So this new super street, which we would need a whole other show to talk about how this is going to work.
Maybe we can schedule that one.
Yeah. But it will reroute traffic to take advantage of some of the light intervals and then ensure that we're having that 89, 88% efficiency going east-west. So it's really going to be a nice feature. That project's funded and should be moving forward, and it looks at completion about 2020. So the second portion of 35 is in Montgomery County, so between 675 and downtown Dayton. There's continually backups on this section. I know because our CEO lives in Greene County, and he calls me every time he's backed up in traffic on the
lucky you.
Yes, on the way into work, and
which is often.
Yes, and he does that strategically because he knows I'm advocating for this, and he's trying to help give me some firepower as we're advocating.
Yeah, give you a little kick.
That's right. That's right. So there is it's 2 lanes and a lot of that stretch on Montgomery County 35, and it really needs to be widened to 3 lanes. There are going to be accidents. Accidents happen on every interstate around, but this will allow for a little more room for people to spread out, hopefully reducing the number of accidents, also allowing for more traffic to be free-flowing east-west on Montgomery County 35. So again, this was about a $28 million project. We went to ODOT and said, that's pretty hefty too. Can we look at a redesign? ODOT redesigned it and brought it down to a $14 million project. So now it's getting a little bit closer to where it could be doable. Still, we didn't have local funding for it. Then our good friends at MVRPC, Brian Martin, really showed some strong leadership here. MVRPC and Brian stepped up to identify some of their local MVRPC funding to serve as the local match, which that then was able to help catapult this from a project that wasn't even being recommended by ODOT to a project that is now being considered as a project to be funded by ODOT track here in January 2018. So it's not funded yet. So I don't want to have to throw out the balloons and streamers and confetti just yet. But it's on the right path, and thanks to our friends at MVRPC, we now have that local match, and now ODOT and track, which I serve on, is looking very favorably on this project.
Good. Yeah. Are there any other transportation projects that the Chamber's looking at that might be in the funnel once we get these 35 projects completed?
Sure. Yeah. There's one other. We have a whole list of transportation priorities that we work on, totaling about $187 million in infrastructure investments that we need here in the region. But there's one that really stands out, and this is one that hasn't had a lot of talk about yet because we're still trying to figure it out. But we know the problem exists, and we're trying to figure out the solution to the problem. So many of us who drive 675 out close to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base can see where Area B really backs up at the gate, and it actually backs up onto the highway during some of those peak rush hours. So if you're going by 675 in the morning, and where Area B, Colonel Glenn Highway exit on 675, there's always traffic backed up. And it's because, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is the largest employer in the state of Ohio, and employees are trying to get into their positions at the base, and all of them are trying to squeeze through that gate at Area B in the morning, and it just backs up, and it really becomes an issue for Wright-Pat. It also becomes an issue as our economic development team and our friends at the Dayton Development Coalition are working to attract new missions here for the base. We need to make sure we have the capacity to support them.
Got it.
Right?
Okay.
So there's the problem. That's the problem. Now, how do we solve the problem? So we're looking at different solutions around there, around Wright-Pat, to solve this issue. Maybe it means another gate is put up. Maybe it means another entryway off of 675 is constructed. We're not exactly for sure yet on what this is going to look like, but the right people are at the table having the right conversations to identify how we're going to solve this problem.
Got it. And the Chamber will be engaged in those conversations, I
The
assume.
Chamber's very engaged in even helping lead these conversations.
Excellent. Okay. And I think you kind of answered the question, but some people might be asking, why does the Chamber of Commerce worry or care about infrastructure and roads in the area? Can you answer that?
I absolutely can answer that. So, a lady that I admire a lot and work a lot with, Debbie Feldman at Dayton Children's Hospital, one time said to me, Chris, we really should create an infrastructure commercial for Dayton that has somebody sitting in their car out in Washington, D.C. for like 3 or 4 hours and not getting home in time for dinner with their family and to catch their kids' sports games and being really frustrated, and then clip to a commercial of somebody getting home in 20 minutes because of an efficient highway network and being able to have dinner with their family and being able to make their kids sporting events and and end it with, this is Dayton.
Right.
And there's a lot of truth to that, because we all know you can get pretty much anywhere in Dayton in 20 to 30 minutes because of our efficient highway system. Businesses know that too. Workforce is the driver for businesses right now. And if your workforce can get easily to and from your place of employment, that's very attractive for businesses to want to locate and operate. So we work very hard to ensure an efficient transportation and infrastructure network. Because if we start to get congested or don't have an efficient network, then that's going to be an economic disadvantage to us.
Right.
So the Chamber keeps this at the forefront to ensure we're getting the right investments in our region and transportation infrastructure, and it's supporting the business community.
Yes, very good explanation. It's important to connect those dots, and it's all connected.
Yes.
So thank you. Is there anything you wanted to add? Anything that we missed today?
I mean, we got all kinds of things happening in 2018.
Right.
I'll mention just probably a couple other things. One is, we're working really closely. So another committee we have at the Chamber is our Federal Military Affairs Committee that looks at legislative issues that would be beneficial to the military community. Well, one of the issues they identified is the fact that most military at Wright Pat, especially active duty, are coming in and doing a 2-year tour at Wright Pat. They're here for 2 years and they move on to another base somewhere else in the country. Well, because of that, when they're here for those 2 years, the state of Ohio says, and you must be in the state for at least 1 year before you can get in-state tuition.
Okay.
For our higher education, for our public colleges. Well, we're looking at trying to get a waiver for that because our military folks that are here at Wright Pat are here for only 2 years, and we would really like them to receive those in-state tuition benefits immediately because that's then going to be more students going to our local colleges and universities. Wright Pat's right here in the Dayton area, so I hope that happens at Wright Pat, at Sinclair, at Clark State, at UD, a lot, Wittenberg. I mean, I won't name all of our members that are colleges and universities, but you know where I'm going with that. Is we have a lot of colleges and universities here that could benefit from these active duty being higher education students.
Right.
And then their dependents as well. If somebody has children that are college age and want to go to school here and they're only here for 2 years, let's get them enrolled in one of our colleges. Selfishly speaking, maybe they'll stay.
Right.
Their parents get transferred out, but maybe they want to stay at Wright State and continue their education there. So this is a good way to get more of our military folks going to our local colleges and universities here in town. And it's really not their fault. The career they've chosen moves them every 2 years. So it's not like they're trying to game our system. They're just only here for 2 years. And if we could waive that 1 year residency requirement for them and let them have in-state tuition right away, it could really be an economic benefit for us.
Good point.
The other thing we're going to be looking at bubbled up from our logistics committee. So our logistics committee bubbled up an issue that said, hey, right now trucks and vehicles that we use for logistics and delivery of goods and services, they are exempt from tax with the state of Ohio. But what's not exempt is the forklifts and the hand trucks and all that type of stuff that we use when we're loading those trucks. However, Indiana does exempt them. So right now, my logistics companies say, guess what I'm doing? I'm driving 45 minutes west to go to the Indiana border to buy my $12,000 forklift.
That's bad for our dealers here.
It is. Yeah, we have some great dealers here like Miami Industrial Trucks over in Clark County and others that sell these products, right? So what can I do to help incentivize them to keep that business in Ohio? That's the question I asked myself at the Chamber. So we're looking at making a proposal to the state legislature that would also eliminate those forklifts from sales tax in Ohio so we can now be competitive with Indiana, keep that business within our state borders, and make it easier on our logistics companies, ultimately making the Dayton area more attractive for logistics and distribution.
Wow. Interesting, all those little pieces you have to think about.
That's right.
Talking about businesses. Well, thank you for your time today, Chris. I appreciate your insight and all the work you do on behalf of our members in the Chamber. Thanks for sharing your information. If you want more information about the Chamber, there's also that list of transportation priorities that Chris mentioned today. You can go to DaytonChamber.org. All of that is listed there, and we'll keep you updated on some of the work that Chris and his public policy team has going on. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Just go out and give us a like. A lot of exclusive content out there on social media. I am Holly Allen, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. Thanks so much for being with us today. Stay tuned for a message from our President and CEO, Phil Parker.
Advocacy is what a good Chamber of Commerce is all about. Whether we are advocating for a change in government policies, or for a highway, or against an onerous regulation, or just for an environment that will help employers create jobs and a better local, state, or national economy, no matter the reason, being a business and community advocate is just in our DNA. When a good Chamber of Commerce searches for a reason for its existence, it usually comes down to doing what is morally, ethically, and legally right for its community. We believe in good government, government that is honest and focuses its resources for the public good. Sometimes we have to take a stand that is not popular for some, like our recent position against marijuana. But whatever the issue, I assure you, it's been discussed and vetted by community leaders who want what is best for our region long before we take a public position. Today's show was able to highlight some of the issues that will surface in 2018 and beyond. Issues that will affect employment, safety, government efficiency, and our economic conditions. We will probably weigh in on many of these. We are and have been the region's biggest cheerleader for over 110 years. That purpose will not change, and we will not step away from that leadership role for our citizens and employers of the Miami Valley.